Hello. So I'd like to talk to you about another type of infographic. Well, it's not really another type, but it's more the type of use, let's say. So far we've mainly been talking about infographics that are meant to be shared online, that are meant to generate traffic to certain websites or different places, be popular, be a part of search engine optimization, that type of thing. Okay, but there is a type of infographic that is not really meant to be shared with the world. Okay, these are internal infographics. So infographics that are used inside your company or maybe inside your institution, that's communicated within a small group of people, let's say. Okay, so online infographics are meant to be shared. Okay, we said they're meant to be shared because the more sharing that goes on, the more popularity, the more credibility, and all that goes with it, that ends up affecting search engine optimization, page ranking, and whatnot, and getting traffic to companies and boosting their brand awareness, that type of thing. Okay, but sometimes we want to make infographics just for the sake of communicating information. Okay, so things that are maybe information that's brought up in a meeting, for example. So for example, meetings, you might have to talk about information, right? So instead of listing information in point form, right, bullet points or whatever, infographics can be a definitely a good way to communicate data. Okay, so let's talk about some things or some people who might be affected by these, or might use these, or might see these. Okay, so employees. Okay, so like I said, in meetings, things like that, people who need to communicate together, okay, need to understand, who need to work towards something. Okay, investors probably, people who are going to put money into your business, so maybe they need to know certain things. Okay, so instead of just writing paragraphs of information to your investors, you can present them with infographics, which can make the information a lot more digestible for them. Okay, clients, people who are going to buy your products. Okay, so why buy my product? Okay, and you can make infographics to explain the information about your products, help them understand better, keep them informed. Okay. So let's start with the first group, employees, your fellow workers or bosses or whatever. So you can see here they're in a meeting, and this guy's confused. Yeah, he doesn't look so bright. But anyways, you can see nice colorful charts, visual communication. So you could probably even take that to the next step, produce an infographic, project it onto a wall or whatever, have certain explanations, all those things that come with an infographic, telling a story. Okay, so not just you telling the story, but the infographic itself telling the story. Okay? And maybe this guy wouldn't be so confused if it was a better told story than just data visualizations. He's like, what's going on? I don't see a title there. I don't understand that. Okay? Convincing or informing investors. So yeah, when you're able to give your investors information, that gives them confidence in your company, right? And that means they invest money, your company does well, that sort of things, right? Clients like to feel like that they know what's going on. Okay, so when you have clients and you tell them information that helps them understand about the company and it makes them feel smart, they feel confident in your product, that sort of thing. So that's another reason to use infographics for your clients. Okay, so yeah, so the situation, right? Imagine you're in a meeting in a company, you need to present something, you need to write a report, distribute it. How are you going to go about that? Okay. So we often think about PowerPoint and Excel, or mainly PowerPoint when we're going to present something. Okay, But a lot of people have done a lot of PowerPoint before, and the simple PowerPoint bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. We call it infinite bullet point syndrome. Okay, that can get pretty boring. Okay, also Excel. Excel is very good at analyzing data, but often it only makes sense to the person who has actually analyzed the data, right? Once you've analyzed the data and you try to present it to somebody else, the other person doesn't know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about because you're the one that made it, but other people may not. Okay, so you have to kind of go that extra step, okay? Turning that stuff into a good story. That's what makes things memorable, okay? People don't remember these facts and figures that you present, but they're probably going to remember the story that you tell, probably going to remember the pictures that you present as part of the story. And that goes for PowerPoint as well. Just placing bullet points with the information doesn't create something memorable, okay? You should have things more visual, and those visuals being used to present some sort of story. Okay, so here's an example, right? Chart about sales, charts about customers, right? If I just go off that slide, do you even remember what you just saw there? Right? How are you supposed to make sense of that? Okay, so yeah, you just don't remember it. They just start looking the same, okay? Especially if you're not looking at them right away, right? If you saw them yesterday, right? The next day, how are you going to remember the difference between those two? How about a week later, right? Stuff just starts looking the same. You have to be able to make things more memorable, and we've learned a lot of skills. Hopefully you remember those skills, and we'll carry those on right after the semester also. Okay, so we've learned those skills, how to make things memorable, how to make them part of a convincing and interesting story. Okay, so this is somewhat like an infographic, but you have to be also a little bit careful too, because you can put an infographic on one PowerPoint slide like I just did, okay? But often that becomes very heavy to digest, and often people don't have that amount of time to sit there and look at one slide, okay? It does seem a bit confusing, right? Just like I said, you have limited space on that slide. You also have limited time that you can spend on a slide, especially if it's just a slide that has nothing changing on it. Okay, let me just show you another one. Okay, so I'm actually going to put this into presentation mode here. By the way, this is the information that was actually presented on that infographic, and some might even argue that this is a little bit more clear than that initial infographic form, where I just kind of like list it point by point. So just kind of take you through it one point at a time, right, and kind of lead you through it. So having that in mind, leading a person through information is important. Okay, so let me just show you that again here in presentation mode. So sometimes you want to break things down step by step, or even in separate slides, okay? Or you can bring things in with animation. So here's the same information, right? So talking about that market size, 4.5 billion market size. And after I've shown you the total market size, let's just move on. And there you go, have an animation, and I bring out that 25% revenue is actually marketing itself, and that equates to 1.1 billion. Okay, so you can see bringing things in one at a time can make what was initially this, right? Basically, I said the same thing there, right? Just by breaking it down step by step, you probably found that a lot easier to follow when I kind of take you through it step by step using animations. Okay, so we want to do this. We want to make infographics. We want to make things more digestible for people, because information, like we said, just keeps growing and growing. There's more and more information out there, and since there's so much information, it just makes less and less sense to us. So it's up to us as good presenters us with knowledge of this to be able to present information to other people. So hopefully you can use those skills not only for making infographics, but when you are in the workforce later on in your lives, using those infographic skills to present information better. Okay. So the people who do want to do this or have thought about doing this often have very little training. Obviously, you'll have an advantage because you do have some training now. But yeah, so people often rely on very simple formats, like I said, PowerPoint, PDFs, right? Making simple visuals on Microsoft Word or whatever, turning them into PDF. But all that, yeah, that tends to be the trend now. People using infographics to try to present their informations so that it makes sense for their company, for their clients, etc. Okay, but what about sensitive information? Right, things that you don't want to get out. Like we said, infographics have a tendency to be shared. Okay, so if you are making something about budgets and whatnot, you have a problem, right? You have information that needs to be communicated, and your information is also confidential, right? What if that information gets leaked out, right? You're presenting information about your strategy for the next year, right? You don't want your competitors knowing about that strategy, right? So you have to be careful not to let your infographics, which very often are shared, right? You don't want them to be shared. You don't want them to get out. Okay? So how do you discourage that? Okay? The biggest thing is having good company policy, just letting people know what are the expectations. Okay, if you just prohibit people are going to resist. Okay, if you keep people in the dark, you don't share information with them, they're going to start poking their nose around, and they're going to start looking for that information. When they find it, they're going to share it. Okay, so what you want to do as a company is you want to, encourage the sharing of things, okay, but also tell your people that it is confidential, okay, and so that people can take steps not to share it outside of the company. Okay, so some examples of these are in your textbook. For example, here's a budget for the police force. I don't know if this wants to go public, right? But maybe for the police force, they want to just have it among themselves and not just shared all over the city or all over the world. Okay. Something like this is also effective because it doesn't show that much detail. So even if this did get out to the public, it doesn't show exact, sales and profits data, right? But it does give you an idea. Like the biggest sales and profits come from Walmart, but it doesn't say like 2.3 billion, where maybe those numbers could actually be kind of dangerous to get out. Okay, maybe you don't want people to know that sort of information. So sometimes keeping slightly things vague, but useful at the same time are good ways to keep things secret, let's say. Okay, yeah, so like I said, strategies, obviously you don't want your competitor taking a look at your strategy. They might want to copy it, make it better, that sort of thing. Okay, so these are all examples of possibly infographics that you don't want running around the web. Okay, so used for yourself, your colleagues, within a confidential group.